All right, so let's start with the big story that we're tracking on WION at this hour, where India and China will be holding military-level talks today in Moldo on the Chinese side of the line of actual control. Now, India, of course, will be pushing for disengagement by the Chinese. In a first, a diplomat will also be attending the military-level talks. Joint Secretary East Asia in the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, Naveen Srivastava, will also be present during the meeting. Now, this is the first Corps Commander level talks between the countries since the Moscow Pact. Earlier in this month, the Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar had met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in the Russian capital. The two leaders had called for the easing of tensions via dialogue and disengagement. This will, of course, be the sixth military-level talks between the two nations since the month of June. Tensions between India and China have escalated after the clash at the Galwan Valley on the 15th of June, where both sides suffered casualties. But India, of course, has been upfront in putting out the total number of soldiers lost their lives. 20 Indian soldiers had lost their lives in that skirmish at the Galwan Valley. China, for its part, is yet to reveal its death toll. And WION Siddhant Sibil has been tracking the developments very closely for us, and he's joining us live on this broadcast. Good morning to you, Siddhant. Now, this, of course, is an important Corps Commander level talks that are to take place today. Give us a sense as to what is expected.
Well, Mohammed, these are the most significant conversations between India and China, practical conversations between the two sides since the standoff began in the month of March, April. We know that since then there have been multiple rounds of conversation, diplomatic conversation, military conversation. In fact, this is the sixth Corps Commander conversation happening. But what is different this time are the two things. First, of course, for the first time, a diplomat will be present in the meeting. The Joint Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, who looks after China in the East Asian division, Naveen Srivastava, will be present in the meeting. Second, of course, this is a direct outcome of the Moscow Pact. We know that earlier this month, both the foreign ministers had met in Moscow, and the five-point agenda talked about easing of tensions through disengagement, dialogue, and maintaining distance between the two troops. And how that was to be decided is through practical conversation on the ground. So this is the practical conversation that is taking place. Of course, we know that in the past also they have taken place. In fact, the first conversation that took place, the Corps Commanders meeting that took place, was in the month of June, and then thereafter a consensus was also arrived on disengagement. But we know that the Galwan incident happened after China unilaterally tried to change the situation on the ground. So the big focus will be the outcome and whether the Chinese side will be keen to implement the outcome. Focus, of course, will be on the two Ds, disengagement and focusing on making sure that situation on the ground improves by maintaining distance between the two troops, because we know that the troops are, of course, very close to each other.
Absolutely, indeed. That, of course, is going to be the point of contention. And this is something that was also discussed, wanted to understand, in the talks that were held between Jaishankar and Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister. But Siddhant, the question, of course, is this. Quite clearly, this entire standoff began once the Chinese decided to change the status quo. It started off in the month of April and May. And since then, it is the Chinese who are very closely camping on the Indian side. So the question, of course, is how willing will the Chinese be to go back to the status quo ante that existed in the month of April?
Well, Mohammed, that's the big question. How much the Chinese side will be willing when it comes to disengagement? Because this is something that India has been reiterating multiple times. In fact, just last week, in response to a question, the MEA spokesperson reiterated that it's high time that the Chinese side disengage at the line of actual control. And we know that even after the Moscow Pact, the foreign ministers meeting, the Chinese were instead dragging their feet on these conversations. There wasn't any response by the Chinese side on when the Corps Commanders meeting is going to take place. But finally, the meeting is going to take place today. In fact, it is expected to start at 9 a.m. Indian Standard Time. We are well past 9 a.m. Indian Standard Time. We will get confirmation very soon on the conversations. And we do expect pretty long conversations. In the past, the conversations have lasted for sometimes in fact 12 to 14 hours. This is primarily because of the fact that there is a translation that is required, but we know that the Indian diplomat is well versed in Chinese, in Mandarin, and that of course is going to help in making sure that the conversations takes place. There's a smooth conversation between the two sides and India, but it has been saying whether it's at the diplomatic talks, at the military talks, that disengagement is a prerequisite, is something that the Chinese side does on the ground and engages on, because the Chinese side claims that it is also keen on disengagement, but we haven't seen any action on the line of actual control.
Absolutely, indeed. That, of course, remains the crux of the question. Will China walk the talk? We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Siddhant Sibil, for joining us and getting us all those updates. This, of course...